Mosala Mosegomi, author and political activist in the period leading to and after the 1976 Soweto youth uprising. His book, Soweto Explodes, The Beginning of the End of Apartheid, details how the fire that toppled the apartheid regime was set and fanned by the students. He joins me in studio. Good evening, Ntate Mosala, and thank you so much for joining us. Now,
thank you for inviting me.
Now, Ntate, let's talk about what inspired this book and it chronicling the events leading to that particular day of the 16th of June in 1976.
You know, the day of June 16 is a day that has never happened anywhere. Actually, you know, when I explain it, I say, never before in the history have high school students took upon the might of the racist government to demonstrate against the imposition of the apartheid legislation that the government was about to implement. Never before were townships that were segregated into areas which blacks were forced to live turned into with hippo trucks patrolling, everywhere. Never before in the history of apartheid was the apartheid government brought down by small kids. What makes June 16 to be different from other demonstration? It can be anywhere in the world. I used to be a student of history. I used to read about all this, the Bismarcks, but I've never come across anything like the uprising. Small kids. Where else in the world have you find the small kids of 13 years, 14 years, 16 years doing what the kids have done in Soweto? Where else in the world have you found a government prepared, armed, going into a township to find these small kids like this? So this is a history that if it was not written, it was not going to be forgotten. But one thing that is very, very important again about our history is that if we don't write our history, somebody else is going to write them. There are so many things that happened in our country that because of not having been documented, they've been forgotten. And we think here those things have never happened. Just for example, the world was very excited about Chris Barnett having done but it was never mentioned that there was a black man next to him, Naki, who made sure that that happened. The history of Mapungu has never been recorded. All these things were not taught at school. We had to come out of school to know about them. For example, as kids, when we were growing up, when we were reading all this history, we never knew that the robots, the X-rays, and all these things were discovered by black people in the US, because those things were. But coming back home here, the Battle of Kutokwanavela in Angola, people don't know about that, and other people come to interpret that for them. That is why I wrote the book, and that is why I made sure that
you go into detail, yes. Now, you go into detail about how the liberation movements were formed. Were you not faced with skepticism?
You see, in the 70s, it started with the high school students. They started, we started with all these organizations. For example, the first organization that the students formed was ASM. That was formed in 1970, and SASM did so. ASM did so. It stood for African Student Movement, and immediately after it was formed, is the one that opposed this thing of this white priest coming to school telling us how barbaric we were. Is the one that opposed the visiting of Malawi president to South Africa. Is the one that opposed all these schools competition. I mean, it was vibrant and it was very, very active in Orlando High, in Orlando West, and in Madibani. Those are the schools that were in which it was very, very. But from there in 1972, the students said, no, why do we still say African student movement? Let's open up. Then that's how SASM was formed, and it became South African Student Movement. And by doing that, it adopted the Black consciousness movement, philosophy. And that's how then the students like Peter Linkwe, like Basil Linkwe, started going out, talking to Steve Biko, contacting all the PCM students, inviting them into all that, and that's how we started imbibing that, and that's how we started doing that. But the importance of that is that as from that particular time, there was a build-up of leadership that was gradually happening. And that is why today people are asking, as to say, the student march on the 16th of June, and as they march, it spread, and all this. That was one of the secrets behind the success of June 16, because this leadership had been building gradually, and it was spread throughout the country. Let me give you a chance.
Now, it's very interesting, and I think just listening to you, and I think the viewers as well, what you're talking about, as you mentioned earlier, that a lot of the information is not documented, and you've taken it upon yourself to document this information, which is very key for our history. Especially, you're breaking down how that particular day, the 16th of June, came to being, and how so that background is very important, especially on this particular day. Now let's talk about a gentleman by the name of Andrew Muletsane. He features very key in your book.
Okay.
Go into detail about
Actually, it's not just Khoti Muletsane. There's another gentleman that I respect and I honor every day, Zweli Sizani. Zweli Sizani, I call him the Antropov of the youth. Antropov is the only foreign minister in the Soviet Union that served both for a long time. Zweli Sizani is the only president, is the only member of SAZIM that served in the old SAZIM and served in the. He was the organizer, and he organized before June 16, he organized after June 16, and he's one of the key people. But there were also people like Malibele Mbuluke. He's one of the guys that took who made sure that SAZIM existed, because in 1970, just a little bit of history. You see, what happened after in 73 is that all the students that were very, very active in the 70s, when SAZIM was started, 71, 72, 73, they were out of high school. And when they came out of high school, they wanted to still get involved, but they were not high school students. That's how NAYO, National Youth Organization, was formed, and that's how they started. Now, since they were students who were very, very much in contact, and they knew what was happening in the high school, they worked together. So it is for that reason that in 1974, when NAYO met, it was at a time when SAZIM here was dead. And one of the reasons that made SAZIM dead was that the school principals had been intimidated, and it was not easy. Students were being expelled and all that. Then in 1974, they said SAZIM must take up, NAYO must take up the responsibility of reviving SAZIM. Now that's where the relationship between SAZIM and NAYO comes in. Let me give you an opportunity.
I feel like I'm in a lecture hall, and you're standing at the podium there and giving us a lecture, a lesson for the day.
Yes.
Now, with bearing that in mind, and listening to different messages of June 16 today from various leaders from across the country, as someone who was there even before 1976, your history basically starts from 1970 of ASIM, and then SAZIM, and 1974 NAYO, and building up to 1976 on that particular day. What resonated with you today?
You see, the most important thing is that the youth today, they are being told that they are different. They're born free, they are that. That is on the book. You can't be a born free when you still come from the same place. You are subjected to the same social, political, and economic conditions. So it's just a label, like a label, or even the label on your clothes is better because it has some status. So, what this day, the importance of this day to me, is that you know, it takes us back to that 1976. And it says to us, what was achieved by then, it has made so different. That is why in my book I say, it's the class of 1976, I call it the class that changed the whole history. It is a generation that forever changed South Africa. And then today, that generation is the one that can sit back and say, this is what we have done. We have delivered freedom. You know, in 1989, when we had it was a conference, we said to ourselves in 1989 that was the last decade of apartheid. And as the same as this generation said, we are going to be the last generation to be oppressed. And we delivered it.
Now, let's very quickly, before we go, we are running out of time,
yes.
Unfortunately. It's very interesting, and we'd like to sit here and chat about this
sure.
more. But looking at today's generation, there's been different movements in terms of the fees must fall movement, which was very strong and using different medium from what was used by your generation in 76, which is social media.
Yes.
The difference between the two and, you know, that movement and what it's achieved currently with the fees must fall. What's your take on that?
Okay, my take is that there's no difference. The things that is why there's a word that says aluta continua. The struggle, apartheid had something like more than 100 laws, and they were oppressing you from the cradle right up to the grave. So our grandparents, our parents and everybody did the part that they had to do at that particular time, and they advanced the struggle to a certain level. So when our generation came, it also found the struggle now at a certain level. We operated at a certain level. Then came this generation. It was called the .com at one time. Now it's called the hashtag. But what is interesting about the hashtag and the fees must fall is that the students today are saying the tree was planted in 1976. So what do they want? They want to enjoy the fruit of that tree.
Dade, unfortunately, we have run out of time and we'll leave it there for now.
Thank you very much.
I wish we could go on, but unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
And that was Dade Mosala Mosegomi, author and political activist whose book chronicles the lives of many of the other activists that the world has forgotten today.